Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Well, for some time now, there's been a lot of talk about states' fiscal crisis, that big challenge that they have. How did they get out of it? How did they get into it in the first place? Well, we're joined now by His Excellency, Oshiomhole, Governor of Edo State, to speak on that matter and more. Thank you for coming on this morning, Your Excellency.
Thank you very much.
Let's start off with this because we know lots of meetings has been holding with the president. Lately, he did urge governors to do what they can to ensure that they pay. Well, not all the states are facing this challenge right now because some of them are paid, but the others not so fortunate. What's the latest thinking about this? Paid salaries.
Yeah, I think the president was clear, but nobody really needed to be told that every employer of labor has obligation, a contractual obligation to pay the salary of those who work. Even the Bible says that the laborer is entitled to his wages. What you have labored, it has to be paid for. And strictly speaking, you don't pay wages because you are rich or because you can afford it. You pay wages because people have worked for it. It is not a gift from a kind-hearted employer. It's an obligation, it's a consequence of work. So everybody is clear. I think what has happened is that at the peak of the oil boom, prices were high. People made projections about their expected expenditure, and budgets were drawn up on the basis of those numbers. And along the line, there was a sharp drop. And this sharp drop that people talk about is not just a drop in terms of price, because prices have dropped below this level before. What is new is the level of so-called crude oil theft, a situation in which 30 persons powerful in the system pretend not to know what was going on and simply explain away huge losses in terms of crude oil theft. So you have a double squeeze of drop in price and drop and escalation in the volume of alleged theft of crude. The combined effect of this is that the total inflow into the Federation account dropped sharply. This is also compounded by the fact that the Ministry of Finance and the NNPC, or rather the Ministry of Petroleum Resources, the two of them working together, simply refuse to transfer to the Federation account a lot of the money that ought to accrue. For example, over the past 4 or 5 years, the LNG had every year made huge payments between $1.5 to $2 billion, which ought to go to the Federation account. This money was never transferred to the Federation account. It was unilaterally expended by the federal government. We were not even informed of the fact that these monies were paid. And each time we asked the then Honorable Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy what was happening with the proceeds from the LNG, no explanation was ever offered, whether in black and white or oral. And there are several other federal agencies like NASIMA that make huge sums of money. This money were illegally and unilaterally spent by federal government, all their agencies, without allowing this to flow to the Federation account. So when you draw up a budget on the basis of anticipated revenue, and there's such a sharp in revenue arising from diversion and also drop in price, obviously something will have to give. Okay,
well, you've packed so many in that response, but we'll come to some other part of it a little later. Let me follow up on the first part of your response, which is the drop in revenue, not just in prices, but the crude as well, stolen crude. But many have also said, and perhaps you've also heard explanations out there where they say, well, if the governors, they should have seen that kind of sign previously that, look, this thing is dropping. It didn't just drop once. It's been consistently dropped over the years. And many thought, look, why couldn't they have reprioritized their spending? Some of them were embarking on capital expenditure, which many thought that they could have slowed down a little bit and ensure that they pay salaries. But that didn't happen. As I said, not all the states are involved. Some states were able to manage theirs. How come others were not able to manage it?
Well, first, the point you have omitted, which is what repeating here, is that it is incorrect argument. You are dealing with 25% of the argument when you limit yourself to states. The federal finances are even in worse shape. Over the past 9 months, under the past government, federal government could not and has not been able to pay salaries from her legitimate income. What she has been doing, which states could not do, was to borrow, using CBN through various instruments, bonds, securities, etc., basically draw down the pension fund, because they are the ones who have liquidity to patronize the bond market. So if we were to be able to stop the federal government from borrowing to pay salaries, the federal government should have defaulted in payment of salary much, much earlier than the states. And the number of months the federal government could have been owing would have been worse than the worst states in the federation. Now, just look at the budget of the federal government over the past 4 years, and you will see the level of deficit finances that was built into the budget. So, in trying to understand the financial crisis, you shouldn't limit yourself to those who can pay. Even those who purport to pay, look at their source of funding the payment. If you do, you will find that whereas the federal government free itself to borrow, in my view, quite recklessly, reckless in the sense that no serious manager goes month after month to borrow for the purpose of payment of salaries. Now, on your second question, why did the state scale down? Now, this goes to the heart of governance. I do not think, with all due respect, that in seeking to govern Edo State, that all I wanted to be able to do is to be able to pay salaries. Salaries have arisen because I promised to rebuild the infrastructure. I promised to provide healthcare services. I promised to provide quality and free education. Now, to deliver on these and other commitments of government, I needed to employ people to carry out these services. So people often think that I just pay salaries. Salaries for what? It's salaries for work done. When the government can't do those basic things, you can't provide, you are not working in the area of social infrastructure, physical infrastructure, education, you name it. What are you there for? If the purpose, the primary purpose of government is to pay salaries, all you needed is very smart clerks and cashiers, get money from somewhere, manage the payroll, and wait for the next month. I think governors rightly fail, at least many. And this is not, it's not even right to talk in general terms, as if governors are in work categories. There are good governors, there are efficient governors, there are performing governors, there are non-performing governors, just like you have in every aspect of life. So, but I think that no governor will find comfort, myself inclusive, in saying that, okay, I am doing well merely because I'm paying salaries. So if I have promised, for example, to rebuild Edo primary and secondary schools, to put roof over their head, and our face is cash crunch, should I feel no pain in stopping construction of schools? I just limit myself to pay teachers.
Just allow me to comment here.
The teacher will be teaching under the tree. So you can scale down. And in any way, you have to scale down. That is the logic of a structural crisis that we face. Because all you have is not a flash. It's something that is likely to be here for quite some time. But also, my last point on this, what we did not budget for is that we are going to have a federal government that will be so hopelessly incapable of protecting our crude revenue. I mean, our crude oil. We know we have no control over price, but we have control over stealing. We can't play that we could do nothing about stealing. And since when did our waters become so porous that people can cut away? I fought this thing at the National Economic Council with the former finance minister, with Alhaji Sambo as vice president presiding. I fought over this crude oil, and in the end they set up what they call crude oil theft committee, and I was a member. And it was very clear that this thing was
exactly where I was driving at, because if you were just maybe an economist or an analyst, someone who is not in government, deep in government, or a first-time governor, or someone who's just coming in, there would have been so much of doubt as to what you're saying. Huge allegations, so many things you have just opened up now, which we all would go into it. In narrowing it down, you've been around and you've been a member of that particular committee trying to stop crude oil theft. And I recall that we had spoken to you, and we had also spoken to the former governor of Delta State, Emmanuel Odonha, on these matters.
Yeah, we're both in that committee.
So it wasn't a new thing, and it's still not new. But now you're trying, you just told us that some of the handicap that some of these states have is also tied to what matters you people were talking about at that time. Now, bringing it to the present, how do we now explain it in a clear-cut term to the people so that they understand that, look, truly, as Chimley asked, because we were trying to also look at infrastructural development, which everyone would want to say, okay, should have been placed on halt, and your own argument on that is really quite clear. But how does the man and woman, and now put in your labor cap, leaving you as a governor?
I have never removed it.
It's good that it's still there. So how do you explain to the man and woman out there who's been working, and these explanations are not really clear to him or her, knowing full well that there has been so many things that have been badly managed, with that same governor being part of the National Council and not making any move to avert that?
Well, what can you do? For example, the day we fought hard at the National Economic Council, and their chairman, the then vice president, said, no, this matter is over. And I said, no, it can't be over. You can't line up people from Ministry of Education, line up the Inspector General of Police to discuss security, where we know that the resource of security is hunger. And part of the hunger is that government is not delivering on its commitment to the people. If government cannot pay salaries, and the governor from Cross River State said to the president, I have been in government for 6 years, the governor then said, for the first time, I am defaulting in my basic obligation to pay salaries because of these so much huge numbers associated with oil theft. We couldn't have budgeted for oil theft. In all our forecasting, you may forecast about price stability. You could have focused on a sudden collapse of the apparatus of state, such that, where you can't lay blame on price, you lay blame on theft of crude. So for me, this is the issue. Now, let me tell you what has even already changed. For 4 years under the past government, everybody knows that every year, the LNG pays huge sums to the federal government, as well as taxes by various other oil companies. And we keep asking the Minister of Finance, where is this money? The Constitution is clear, and President Buhari eloquently alluded to this 3 days ago when he inaugurated the council, that all of these monies will now flow to the Federation account in compliance with the extant rules.
So they're scrapping the excess crude account.
Now, what has already happened, courtesy of President Buhari, and in line with his commitment to transparency and openness, is that he had directed that all money that ought to flow to the account should flow. Immediately, CBN is now going to transfer to the Consolidated Fund for distribution to state $2.1 billion, which flow in from LNG this year. Thank God Buhari is there now.
How helpless were the governors then?
If this had happened, this money had gotten in under the last government, that money should have been spent unilaterally. Yet, everybody knows that this money belongs to the 3 tiers of government.
That's a response.